This video exists because warning labels had to be invented. Every instruction you're about to hear was written after someone already messed it up in the worst way possible. Today, it's 101 real moments where Americans ignored the directions and paid instantly with fire, explosions, ruined homes, and pure regret. If you've ever thought, that warning isn't for me, congratulations. This video is about you. 1. Microwaves are fantastic for leftovers. But one guy cleaning up for a first date thought 30 minutes was the suggested sanitizing time for his kitchen sponge. The instructions actually said 30 seconds. Instead of a fresh kitchen, his entire apartment ended up smelling like a burnt industrial tire factory. He didn't just kill the germs, he basically invited them to a nuclear winter. Talk about a mood killer. 2. Every Thanksgiving, the manual explicitly warns that a turkey must be fully thawed before hitting the deep fryer. Yet, after 3 beers and 0 patience, some backyard chefs treat water and boiling oil like a fun chemistry experiment. The result is usually a vertical pillar of fire that makes the neighbors call the bomb squad. Congratulations, you just turned dinner into a felony. 3. The instruction, add water to the fill line, is printed in bold for a reason. During finals week, a sleep-deprived student shoved a dry cup of noodles into the microwave and hit start. Within minutes, the plastic cup wasn't cooking lunch. It was performing a slow-motion meltdown into the rotating tray. You can feel the secondhand embarrassment coming, right? 4. Liquid dish soap and automatic dishwashers are not interchangeable, no matter how much you want to save a trip to the store. One guy ignored the pods-only warning and gave the machine a massive squeeze of Dawn. His kitchen was buried under 6 feet of bubbles before the rinse cycle even finished. It looked like a foam party hosted by a very angry cloud. 5. Reading the label is crucial, especially when you are half asleep and reaching for eye drops in the dark. A woman in Maryland mistook a tube of superglue for her lubricating drops and effectively industrial sealed her eyelids shut. Doctors had to perform surgery while holding back their professional judgment. That is what we call a permanent blink. 6. Most hair dye kits demand a strict 20-minute timer. But one guy decided 40 minutes would make him twice as handsome for his high school reunion. He didn't get a richer color. He got a scalp that looked like it lost a cage match with a chemistry set. His skin turned a shade of neon orange that should only exist on hazardous waste signs. Instructions are a survival guide, not a suggestion. 7. The IKEA manual couldn't have been clearer about step 3, but on moving day, logic usually takes a back seat. This guy spent 8 hours assembling a queen bed, only to realize the entire frame was inside out. He ended up with sharp metal brackets, pointing directly at his spine like a medieval torture device. He spent his first night in the new apartment sleeping on a pile of cardboard boxes. 8. That bright orange warning sticker on the pan wasn't decorative. It specifically forbid using metal utensils, but one hungry bachelor went to town with a steel fork anyway. Within 2 days, the expensive coating was peeling off into his scrambled eggs like gray confetti. He basically paid $60 to season his breakfast with industrial chemicals. Pure genius. 9. Space heaters come with a massive tag screaming, "Do not plug into a power strip." During a record-breaking cold snap, a guy in Ohio decided that warning was just a suggestion for people with less confidence than him. He loaded 3 heaters onto one cheap plastic strip and watched his wall start to literally liquefy. At this point, the warning label is just a witness for the insurance company. 10. The "Add oil before use" sticker was literally covering the gas cap, making it impossible to miss. Yet, on his first day of home ownership, this guy peeled it off and kept moving like he had a flight to catch. He ran the engine dry until it made a sound like a bag of rocks, and then the machine simply rage quit life. Congratulations, you just bought a $500 paperweight. You saw that one coming, didn't you? 11. Modern pressure cookers are basically kitchen grenades if you ignore the pressure release valve. During a big Sunday dinner, one impatient host ignored the "wait for natural release" instruction and forced the lid open. A gallon of boiling beef stew hit the ceiling with the force of a fire hose. The kitchen didn't just get messy, it looked like a crime scene in a vegetable patch. 12. That bright orange "wash hands immediately" warning on self-tanner bottles isn't there for style. Right before her sister's wedding, one bridesmaid decided to skip the gloves and the hand scrubbing. She woke up the next morning with palms the color of a rusty basketball. She looked less like a bridesmaid and more like she had just finished a double shift at a Cheeto factory. 13. Dry clean only is a command, not a suggestion. On the morning of a huge job interview, one guy decided his silk suit just needed a quick refresh in the heavy-duty wash cycle. He pulled out a garment that would only fit a very fashionable chihuahua. He didn't just wash his suit, he committed a felony against fashion. 14. Positive to positive and negative to negative sounds, simple enough until you are stranded in a dark parking lot. One guy ignored the battery diagram and decided the cable colors were just a creative choice. He crossed the terminals and sent a massive surge through his car's computer system. He didn't jumpstart the car, he basically lobotomized it. That is a $4,000 mistake born from sheer arrogance. 15. The manual for pepper spray clearly states to point the nozzle away from your face. After watching one too many true crime shows, a woman decided to test her new canister in a small, unventilated bathroom. She managed to mace herself, the dog, and the shower curtain in one go. If you have ever wondered what spicy air tastes like, she is the person to ask. You can feel this one coming, right? 16. Mixing cleaning chemicals is a great way to meet your ancestors early. In a cleaning frenzy before a housewarming party, a guy ignored the "do not mix" label on the bleach bottle. He poured in some ammonia and accidentally manufactured a cloud of toxic gas in his guest bathroom. He didn't just clean the tile, he created a localized war zone. Science is fun until it tries to kill you. 17. The instructions said, find a wall stud, but the drywall seemed sturdy enough to one optimistic decorator. 2 hours before the Super Bowl kickoff, he mounted an 85-inch TV using nothing but hope and some cheap plastic anchors. Midway through the second quarter, the entire wall gave up. The TV hit the floor with a sound that signaled the end of his social life. Drywall is not a structural miracle. 18. Not all contact lens solutions are created equal. One guy grabbed a peroxide-based cleaner and ignored the "must soak for 6 hours" warning before a big presentation. He popped the lens directly into his eye and experienced what scientists call the gateway to hell. His eyeball didn't just sting, it felt like it was being interrogated by a blowtorch. That is a mistake you only make once. 19. Gasoline vapors are significantly more dangerous than the liquid itself. While prepping for a weekend camping trip, a guy decided to fill his plastic gas cans while they were still inside the trunk of his SUV. The manual says to place them on the ground to avoid static, but he was in a rush. One tiny spark turned his luxury vehicle into a rolling charcoal grill. Some people are just too impatient for basic physics. 20. The label said 1 ounce of pesticide per gallon of water. Tired of seeing dandelions on his lawn, a suburban dad decided to use the entire concentrated bottle to show those weeds who was boss. Instead of a green lawn, he ended up with a patch of dirt that looked like the surface of Mars. He didn't just kill the weeds, he nuked the entire ecosystem of his backyard. Are we having fun yet? 21. Caustic oven cleaner labels basically beg you to wear gloves and ventilate. But trying to impress his mother-in-law, one guy decided raw hands and vibes was a valid safety plan. He sprayed, scrubbed, and immediately learned what it feels like to shake hands with acid. The oven was spotless. His fingertips looked like they'd been chewed by science. 22. The warning label on the pop-up tent said, "Release latch slowly," to avoid injury. After arriving at the campsite in the pitch dark, an exhausted hiker decided to just rip the cord and hope for the best. The spring-loaded frame exploded outward like a bear trap, clipping him right in the jaw. He spent the night sleeping in the car with an ice pack and a bruised ego. The tent won the fight. The hiker won a trip to the ER. 23. Never use a plunger immediately after pouring liquid drain cleaner down the pipes. Dealing with a clogged sink right before guests arrived, one guy ignored the bold warning and started pumping away. The caustic acid sprayed back onto his face and arms like a chemical volcano. You really cannot fix stupid with a rubber suction cup. 24. The can of waterproof spray clearly states, use only in a well-ventilated area to prevent suffocation. Protecting his new suede boots in the middle of winter, One guy sprayed the entire can in his tiny windowless bedroom. Within 10 minutes, his lungs felt like they had been coated in liquid plastic. He didn't just waterproof his shoes, he basically laminated his own internal organs. 25. Electronic door locks are a modern miracle until you skip the mandatory calibration step. After a long flight home from vacation, a guy installed his new smart lock but ignored the final setup instructions. The bolt jammed halfway, locking him out of his own house at 3 in the morning. He had to pay a locksmith $300 to break into his own property. Technology is only as smart as the person holding the screwdriver. You saw that one coming, didn't you? 26. That tiny tube of super glue has a clear warning against skin and mouth contact, but one guy with a loose dental crown and a big date on Friday night felt adventurous. He didn't fix his tooth, he accidentally industrial sealed his tongue to the roof of his mouth. He spent the entire romantic dinner sounding like he was trying to swallow a live bee. 27. The warning label on a charcoal grill says, "Outdoor use only," for a very obvious life-saving reason. When a sudden rainstorm hit his Super Bowl tailgate, one guy moved the party into his closed garage to stay dry. He woke up in the back of an ambulance instead of watching the halftime show. Carbon monoxide does not care about your football plans. 28. Most hair removal creams specifically say, "Keep away from eyebrows." But one girl getting ready for her cousin's wedding thought it was a shortcut to a perfect arch. She didn't get a new shape. She got a forehead that looked like a shiny bowling ball. She spent the entire ceremony drawing her face back on with a Sharpie. 29. Fertilizer spreaders have a specific dial setting to prevent burning the grass with too many chemicals. On his first weekend in suburbia, one guy ignored the instructions and just opened the floodgates. 2 days later, his front yard looked like a giant green tiger with dead brown stripes. He didn't just fertilize the lawn, he gave it a permanent, ugly mohawk. 30. Your expensive limited edition sneakers have a tag that says, "Hand wash only." But one guy after a muddy music festival thought the heavy-duty dryer cycle was a better idea. He opened the door to find 2 melted rubbery lumps that looked more like modern art than footwear. You just turned $500 into a puddle of sad plastic. 31. Spraying self-tanner indoors requires a ventilated tent, but one bridesmaid-to-be decided her tiny windowless bathroom was good enough. She ended up with an orange glow, but so did the toilet, the shower curtain, and the family cat. The bathroom looked like a crime scene in a pumpkin patch. You can feel this one coming, right? 32. Flammable is the biggest word on a can of cooking spray. Yet one amateur chef decided to grease his hot grill while the flames were already roaring. He created a backyard flamethrower that singed off both his eyebrows and most of his pride. It turns out, aerosolized oil and open fire are basically a DIY bomb. 33. The repair manual for a modern laptop warns, "Do not use metal tools to pry the battery, because lithium is extremely volatile." One college student during finals week ignored the warning and used a steak knife to get the old cell out. He pierced the casing and turned his MacBook into a very expensive, very smoky fireworks display. Technology hates being stabbed. 34. Applying premium car wax in direct, 100-degree sunlight is a recipe for a permanent disaster. One guy on moving day wanted his truck looking sharp, but the instructions said, "Apply to cool surface only." The wax baked onto the paint like industrial-strength cement. He had to pay $400 just to see his own reflection again. 35. Using an airless paint sprayer requires meticulous masking, which one guy completely skipped during a high-speed bedroom makeover. He didn't just paint the walls, he gave his ceiling, floor, and expensive ceiling fan a fine mist of eggshell white. He spent the next week scraping paint off his light bulbs with a razor blade. 36. The first step of any thermostat installation is turn off the breaker to the furnace to avoid blowing a fuse. One guy on the coldest day of the year figured he could handle 2 little wires while they were still live. He shorted the entire system and fried a $500 control board. He spent the weekend huddled under 7 blankets. 37. A vintage cast iron skillet is a family heirloom that should never, ever see the inside of a dishwasher. One guy's new roommate thought he was being helpful after a big steak dinner and ran it on the heavy scrub cycle. The pan came out looking like a rusted anchor from a 17th century shipwreck. You can't just wash away a century of seasoning. 38. That little red safety clip on the treadmill console is there to save your life, not just dangle as a decoration. One guy training for a marathon decided it was too annoying and left it unhooked. He tripped at 10 miles per hour and was launched into the drywall like a human cannonball. The treadmill didn't stop, but his athletic career definitely did. 39. Do not overinflate is the golden rule for air mattresses. But one guy preparing for his in-laws' visit wanted the bed extra firm. He ignored the warning and kept the pump running until the seams were screaming. At 2 in the morning, the bed exploded like a sonic boom, giving his father-in-law a heart attack. 40. Most electric blankets have a tag saying, "Do not fold while in use," to prevent the internal wires from overheating. One guy on a freezing winter night folded his blanket over his feet for extra warmth and went to sleep. He woke up to his bed literally smoldering under his toes. Instructions are not a suggestion, they are a survival guide. 41. The manual for a heavy-duty brush cutter explicitly says to wear steel-toed boots. But after 3 beers and 0 patience, a guy in Georgia decided flip-flops were fine for a quick trim. He didn't just cut the grass, he nearly gave himself a permanent 5-toe discount at the shoe store. Physics doesn't care about your footwear. 42. Close lids securely before operating is a warning that shouldn't need to exist. But here we are. Trying to show off his smoothie skills for a new girlfriend, one guy hit the pulse button on a full pitcher of beets without the cap. His white kitchen looked like a crime scene in a juice bar. You can feel this one coming, right? 43. The box says 1 spray per nostril, but during a brutal flu season, one guy figured the whole bottle would work faster. He didn't just clear his sinuses, he gave himself a nosebleed that looked like a scene from a horror movie and a heart rate that could power a small city. More is definitely not better with chemicals. 44. Do not exceed the load limit is usually ignored on moving day when you just want to be finished. One guy stuffed 3 heavy comforters into a top loader and walked away. The machine didn't just shake, it literally walked itself across the laundry room and ripped the pipes out of the wall. That is a very expensive way to flood your house. 45. That 80-inch screen came with a manual that screamed, "Do not use glass cleaner." Naturally, one clean freak dad used half a bottle of Windex to get some fingerprints off before guests arrived. The chemicals ate right through the anti-glare coating, leaving the screen looking like a blurry oil slick. You just turned a $3,000 television into a giant useless mirror. 46. Checking the transmission fluid while the engine is cold is a basic instruction, but one guy on his way to a job interview decided to do it while the car was screaming hot. He pulled the dipstick and got a face full of scalding red fluid. He didn't just miss the interview, he spent the afternoon looking like he lost a fight with a lobster. 47. Human dish soap is great for plates, but the bottle says not for use on animals. After his dog rolled in something nasty, one guy gave him a bath in ultra-concentrated Dawn. The poor dog's skin got so dry and irritated, he looked like a shedding reptile. Instructions aren't just for people, they're for the innocent creatures living with them. 48. Indoor use only is the most ignored label in December history. One guy decorated his entire front porch with indoor-rated strands and wondered why the first rainstorm caused a massive short circuit. He didn't just lose the lights, he melted his outdoor outlet and nearly toasted his siding. Common sense is not a common virtue. 49. Never insert metal objects is a warning we learn in kindergarten, but one guy trying to retrieve a stuck bagel after a long night out forgot the rules. He used a silver butter knife while the toaster was still plugged in. He didn't get his bagel, he got a high-voltage reminder that he is not a conductor. That's a shock to the system. 50. Start on the lowest setting is the golden rule for home laser kits. Trying to get ready for a beach trip, one girl cranked the machine to maximum power immediately. She didn't get smooth legs. She got a pattern of square burns that looked like a game of Tetris. At this point, the warning label is just screaming at you. 51. The assembly guide for an ergonomic chair says ensure the hydraulic lift is locked. After 3 hours of struggling, a guy just sat down to test it out. The lift collapsed instantly, sending a metal rod right through the seat cushion. He didn't just break the chair, he nearly became a permanent part of the furniture. 52. Check the label for color. Fastness is a step everyone skips until they ruin their favorite shirt. One guy poured regular bleach into a load of dark towels because he didn't read the non-chlorine requirement. He ended up with a collection of tie-dyed rags that looked like they belonged at a 1960s music festival. Congratulations, you just ruined $100 in linens. 53. The manual for a 10,000-gallon pool clearly states it must be placed on level, reinforced ground. One guy decided his second-story wooden deck was a better spot because of the view. The deck held for 10 minutes before 40 tons of water turned it into a pile of splinters in a backyard waterfall. Physics is a harsh teacher. 54. Believe it or not, the box says, "Do not deep fry." One guy, after 4 beers and a lost bet, decided a frozen pepperoni pizza belonged in the turkey fryer. The ice crystals hit the oil and created a grease volcano that nearly took out his garage. You can't just fry your way out of bad decisions. 55. The warning on the back of the drain cleaner says, "Never use in a toilet," because the heat can crack the porcelain. One guy ignored it and poured 2 bottles down a stubborn clog. The chemical reaction made the toilet bowl literally explode into a dozen sharp pieces. That is a very messy and expensive way to realize you are not a plumber. You saw that one coming, didn't you? 56. Self-cleaning oven instructions are very clear about removing the metal racks first. After a massive Thanksgiving dinner, one exhausted host left them inside and cranked the heat to the maximum setting. The racks didn't just discolor, they fused to the oven walls like a scene from a sci-fi movie. Congratulations, you just welded your kitchen shut. 57. The can of industrial degreaser said, "Use only in a well-ventilated area," but during a heat wave, one guy read it like, "Trap the fumes so they work harder." He sprayed the whole garage, shut the door, and promptly passed out like a Victorian fainting lady. He woke up face first on concrete with a headache that felt legally binding. Labels are not decorative. 58. The weight limit on a car roof rack is not a challenge, yet one guy moving into his first apartment ignored the 80-pound cap. He strapped a solid oak dresser to his sedan and wondered why the roof caved in like a crushed soda can. His car now looks like it is wearing a very expensive metal pancake. 59. Concrete mix instructions give an exact water ratio, but on a humid Saturday, one guy decided more water means smoother, like he was making pancake batter. He poured until it was gray soup, spread it anyway, and watched it never truly set. A week later, it cracked into sad little islands you could kick loose with a sneaker. He didn't build a patio, he built a monument to shortcuts. 60. The label on a can of expanding foam says use in small amounts because the product grows. During a drafty winter night, a guy decided to fill a wall gap by emptying the entire canister into one single hole. The foam expanded with enough force to pop the drywall right off the studs. At this point, the warning label is just laughing at you. 61. Most steam irons specifically demand distilled water to prevent mineral buildup. One guy figured tap water was fine for his lucky interview shirt and ignored the manual entirely. The iron coughed out a giant glob of brown, rusty sludge right onto his white collar 10 minutes before he had to leave. That is a very loud way for an appliance to tell you no. 62. Weed killer and liquid fertilizer bottles look identical if you do not read the labels carefully. Right before his neighborhood garden tour, one guy grabbed the wrong jug and soaked his prize-winning roses in concentrated poison. Within 48 hours, his garden looked like the set of a post-apocalyptic movie. Instructions are a survival guide, not a suggestion. 63. Do not leave charging unattended is the golden rule for cheap electric scooters. One college kid plugged his in and went to a 3-hour movie, ignoring the fire hazard warning in the box. He returned to a dorm room that looked like a charcoal grill and a very angry fire marshal. Always read the fine print before your house burns down. 64. Sunscreen instructions tell you to reapply every 2 hours, but on the first day of vacation, one guy thought once a day was enough. He spent 8 hours in the Florida sun and woke up looking like a glazed ham. He didn't just get a tan, he became a walking billboard for the importance of basic literacy. 65. A fire extinguisher is a lifesaver, but the manual says, do not test spray to check the pressure. One curious guy in his new apartment wanted to see how it worked and gave the handle a quick squeeze. He spent the next 6 hours cleaning toxic yellow dust off every single surface in his kitchen. Curiosity killed the cat, and it definitely ruined your dinner. 66. Dishwasher safe does not apply to high-end Japanese chef knives. One guy's roommate tried to be helpful after a sushi night and tossed a $300 blade into the heavy-duty scrub cycle. The heat and chemicals turned the edge into a jagged saw blade. You just turned a masterpiece into a very expensive butter knife. You can feel this one coming, right? 67. The warning label on a weighted blanket says not for use on small pets. One guy thought his Chihuahua would love the extra pressure during a thunderstorm and tucked him in tightly. He spent the next 10 minutes frantically searching for a very flattened and very confused dog. Some people are just too helpful for their own good. 68. Dry clean only on a leather jacket is a command from the fashion gods. After a spilled drink at a concert, one guy threw his vintage coat into a hot wash and a high-heat dryer. He pulled out a piece of shriveled rawhide that would not even fit a toddler. You didn't wash it. You effectively mummified it. 69. Most slow cookers have a sear function that should only be used for 15 minutes. One guy trying to save time during a big football game left it on the highest setting for 6 hours straight. He didn't get a pot roast. He got a ceramic pot that cracked in half in a kitchen full of black smoke. Technology is only as smart as the user. 70. Treadmill manuals tell you to lubricate the belt every few months to prevent friction. One guy ignored the maintenance schedule for 3 years until the motor literally exploded in a cloud of blue sparks while he was running. He didn't just lose his workout routine, he gained a very heavy piece of scrap metal. You saw that one coming, didn't you? 71. The number one guard on a set of hair clippers is not a suggestion for a light trim. 10 minutes before his high school reunion, a guy skipped the manual and went straight for the scalp. He didn't get a stylish fade. He got a permanent landing strip that made him look like a monk in a midlife crisis. That is a haircut that says, I am bad at reading instructions. 72. Descaling your coffee maker with vinegar requires a very thorough rinse cycle. But on the morning of his bar exam, one guy figured one quick flush was enough. He took a giant gulp of his morning brew and spent the next hour tasting the color of regret. His coffee didn't just wake him up, it basically pickled his internal organs. 73. Placing a car jack directly under the floorboards instead of the frame is a mistake you only make once. Trying to save $40 on a DIY oil change, a guy watched in horror as the jack punched a clean hole right through his floor mat. He didn't just fix the car, he gave his passenger a very unwanted view of the moving pavement. 74. High-efficiency washers have a specific tray for liquid detergent, but during a hectic moving day, one guy poured a gallon of soap directly into the bleach dispenser. The machine panicked and started spitting out thick gray sludge that smelled like a chemical spill. You can feel this one coming, right? 75. That little metal lever inside your fireplace is called a damper, and the manual says it must be opened before you light a match. On the first cold night of the year, a guy ignored the instructions and turned his living room into a smoked salmon factory within seconds. Your house is a home, not a barbecue pit. Verdict: read the lever or breathe the soot. 76. Laptops need airflow to live, yet one gamer during a 48-hour marathon decided his thick, fuzzy blanket was the perfect desk. He ignored the "do not block vents" warning until his computer literally melted its own internal soldering. He didn't just lose the game, he turned a $2,000 rig into a very expensive foot warmer. 77. Mixing liquid weed killer and liquid fertilizer in the same sprayer is explicitly forbidden, but a guy trying to outdo his neighbor thought he was a genius chemist. He created a toxic cocktail that didn't just kill the weeds, it made his grass turn a shade of blue that does not exist in nature. Science is not your hobby, Steve. 78. Oil-based primer and water-based paint do not play nice together, no matter how much you want them to. While prepping a nursery for his first kid, a guy ignored the compatibility chart and slapped a fresh coat of blue over wet primer. The paint peeled off the wall in giant, rubbery sheets like a sunburned lizard. You cannot just wish your way out of basic chemistry. 79. Blenders have a maximum fill line for hot liquids to prevent steam-powered explosions. One guy making a batch of spicy salsa for a housewarming party ignored the line and filled it to the very brim. The lid hit the ceiling with the force of a gunshot, coating his entire kitchen in boiling tomato lava. Are you starting to see a pattern here? 80. Most chainsaws require a very specific 50-to-1 gas and oil mix to keep the engine from exploding. After a big storm, a guy in a rush poured pure gasoline into the tank and pulled the cord. The engine lasted exactly 30 seconds before it shrieked and welded itself into a solid block of useless iron. Congratulations, you just bought a very heavy, very sharp paperweight. 81. Mosquito coils are labeled for outdoor use only for a reason that usually involves not dying. One guy at a lakeside cabin thought they would work better on his nightstand while he slept. He woke up 3 hours later with lungs that felt like he had been smoking wet leaves in a closet. The mosquitoes survived, but his dignity certainly did not. 82. The instruction manual says to clean your toaster by removing the crumb tray, not by submerging it in the kitchen sink. After a messy breakfast, a guy decided to give his appliance a deep soak while it was still plugged in. He didn't get a clean toaster. He got a high-voltage lesson in why water and electricity are not best friends. 83. Fast charging a battery that is not rated for high voltage is a recipe for a localized fire. One guy trying to juice up his old drone ignored the use original charger warning and plugged it into his laptop's power brick. The battery swelled up like a pufferfish and then rage quit life with a giant puff of toxic smoke. 84. Microwaving dishes with gold or silver trim is a great way to start an indoor lightning storm. One guy hosting his first fancy dinner party put his grandmother's heirloom plates in for a quick warm-up. He didn't just ruin the dinner, he turned his microwave into a high-tech sparkler that smelled like ozone and sadness. 85. Most frozen pizzas tell you to remove the cardboard before placing them in a 400-degree oven. Starving after a long gym session, one guy just slid the whole thing onto the rack and walked away. 10 minutes later, his smoke alarm was screaming and his dinner looked like a charcoal frisbee. If you can't manage a pizza, maybe just stick to cereal. Verdict: the cardboard is for shipping, not for seasoning. 86. That lefty-loosey rule has a major exception for circular saw blades, which use reverse threading for safety. One DIY enthusiast during a Saturday deck project ignored the arrow and used a massive wrench to force it the wrong way. He didn't loosen the bolt. He snapped the entire drive shaft clean off. Instructions aren't just suggestions, they are physics lessons you can't afford to fail. 87. The label says baking soda, but during a high-stakes birthday bake-off, one guy thought it was exactly the same as baking powder. He swapped 3 teaspoons of powder for 3 teaspoons of soda and produced a cake that tasted like a salt mine and looked like a deflated tire. You can feel the disappointment from here, can't you? 88. Your high-end upright vacuum is strictly for dry debris, a fact one guy ignored after spilling a gallon of milk before a housewarming party. He figured the suction would handle the liquid, but the milk just bypassed the filter and hit the motor at full speed. He didn't clean the floor. He created a localized yogurt explosion and a permanent smell of sour dairy. 89. Concentrated antifreeze must be mixed with water, but during a record-breaking cold snap, one guy thought using the pure chemical would make his car invincible. Instead of protecting the engine, the thick sludge caused his water pump to seize up and die in a dark parking lot. More is not better when you are fighting thermodynamics. 90. Laundry day is tough, but one guy took it to another level by throwing an entire box of dryer sheets into the washing machine instead of the dryer. He thought it would make his clothes extra soft during the rinse cycle. He ended up with a gummy and waxy mess that clogged his drainage pump and ruined his favorite jeans. Instructions are a survival guide. People? 91. That waterproof rating on your new phone case usually comes with a very specific depth and time limit. Trying to get the perfect underwater shot at a pool party, one guy ignored the 30-minute warning and spent 3 hours filming at the bottom of the deep end. He didn't get a viral video, he got a very expensive and very wet paperweight. 92. Automatic cat litter boxes require a specific type of clumping sand to function properly. One guy on his first week of pet ownership used cheap and non-clumping clay, and watched the mechanical arm jam itself into a solid block of gray cement. He didn't save time on chores. He spent 4 hours performing a messy autopsy on a plastic box. 93. The can clearly said exterior use only due to toxic fumes, but a guy wanting a rugged look for his home office ignored the warning. He painted all 4 walls and spent the next 3 days hallucinating that his desk was a giant squirrel. You cannot just ignore chemical warnings because you like the color. Verdict: brain cells are more important than aesthetics. 94. The manual for your garbage disposal screams do not pour hot grease down the drain. After a massive bacon breakfast, one guy figured a little hot water would keep things moving. 3 hours later, the grease solidified into an industrial-strength plug that required a $1,000 plumbing bill to remove. Bacon is for eating, not for plumbing. 95. Hair removal cream has a very specific body-only warning that should be respected at all costs. Getting ready for a big date, one guy decided to use it on his beard to save time shaving. He didn't get a smooth jawline. He got a chemical burn that made him look like he had been bobbing for fries in a deep fryer. That is a mistake you literally wear on your face. 96. Every propane tank has a store outdoors only warning stamped into the metal for a reason. During a move, one guy decided to keep his spare tank in the basement to prevent theft. A tiny leak turned his house into a pressurized fuel bomb that only needed one spark to relocate the entire neighborhood. Common sense is not a common virtue. 97. Hot glue guns are for crafts, not for quick fixes on your body. After a minor accident during a school project, one guy tried to use a high-temp glue gun to close a small cut on his finger. He didn't just seal the wound, he gave himself a third-degree burn and a permanent scar shaped like a teardrop. Are we having fun yet? 98. The one person at a time rule on trampolines is for safety, not for being a fun killer. During a chaotic birthday party, 5 adults decided to test the limits of a backyard trampoline simultaneously. The fabric didn't just stretch, it gave up on life and sent everyone into a heap of twisted ankles and bruised egos. 99. Using your gas oven as a space heater is a direct invitation to carbon monoxide poisoning. During a power outage, one guy left the oven door open and the flame high to keep his living room warm. He didn't stay cozy. He nearly met his ancestors before his neighbor noticed him passed out through the window. Instructions are literally written in blood. 100. Shredders require a drop of oil every few months, but WD-40 is a flammable lubricant that does not belong near electric motors. One guy trying to fix a jam sprayed the internal gears while they were still spinning. He created a miniature firestorm inside the machine that turned his old tax returns into a column of ash. You saw that one coming, didn't you? 101. The wave charging myth is the ultimate test of human intelligence. During a long gaming marathon, one guy believed a fake infographic saying his smartphone could recharge in 60 seconds if placed in a microwave. He ignored the giant warning on the door and hit start. Within 3 seconds, his $1,000 phone turned into a miniature sun and melted through the glass. You just paid a massive premium for a toasted battery and a house that smells like ozone. Some people truly are the reason we have warning labels on shampoo. Now be honest, which number exposed you? Not a friend, not someone you know, you. Drop the number and what you ignored in the comments. And if this video made you understand why shampoo has instructions, hit like, subscribe, and stay here. Because as long as people keep skipping the directions, we'll never run out of material.